The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across my bedroom carpet. "Mom, seriously? That dress?" Victoria's voice dripped with disdain. She gestured towards the navy blue dress I'd carefully laid out on the bed, the one I'd planned to wear to my nephew's wedding. "People will think we can't afford to dress you properly." I smoothed the fabric, a soft, high-quality linen. "What's wrong with it? It's perfectly appropriate." Victoria rolled her eyes. "Appropriate, Mom. It's dowdy. You'll look like you're trying too hard to blend in, and that color, it washes you out." She picked up the dress, her nose wrinkling. "Honestly, I expected better. This wedding is important. Julian's family will be there." My stomach tightened at the mention of Julian, Victoria's fiancé. It wasn't the dress itself. It was the underlying message, the implication that I somehow reflected poorly on them. "I thought it was flattering," I said quietly, my voice betraying none of the hurt I felt. "I like the cut and the fabric. The fabric is irrelevant." "Mom," Victoria interrupted. "It's the overall impression. You need something sharper, more modern, something that says you belong." She tossed the dress back onto the bed, where it landed in a crumpled heap. "Look," she continued, softening her tone slightly, "I just want you to look your best, for your sake, and for ours." I bit back a sharp reply. "Ours," I repeated, meeting her gaze. Victoria busied herself with rearranging the items on my dressing table, avoiding my eyes. "Well, yes," she said, her voice a little too casual. "Julian's parents are particular. Appearances matter to them." I knew exactly what she meant. They were the kind of people who judged worth by labels and price tags. I watched as she picked up a framed photograph of us from my dresser, a picture taken on Victoria's graduation day. "Don't you want to make a good impression?" she asked, her voice laced with something that sounded almost like pleading. I forced a smile. "Of course, dear. I'll find something else. That's my mom," she chirped, setting the photo back down. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "Oh, by the way, that shade of blue really clashes with your skin tone." She left the room, her footsteps echoing in the hallway. I stood there for a moment, staring at the discarded dress, the sting of her words fresh in my mind. This wasn't about the dress. This wasn't even really about the wedding. This was about control. About Victoria subtly dictating how I presented myself to the world. Later that evening, I pulled out another dress, a simple, elegant cream-colored shift I'd bought for a garden party last summer. It was comfortable and, I thought, quite stylish. "What do you think of this one?" I asked when Victoria came into the kitchen. She eyed it critically, her lips pursed. "It's fine," she said, her tone lukewarm. "But wouldn't you rather wear something more festive? It's a wedding, after all." I felt a flicker of annoyance. "This is festive," I retorted. "It's a beautiful dress." Victoria sighed dramatically. "Mom, it's just a little plain, don't you think? Maybe with some accessories." "Accessories?" I raised an eyebrow. She nodded, her eyes gleaming. "Yes, like that beautiful emerald necklace you have, and those diamond earrings. They'd really elevate the look." I frowned. "I'm not sure I want to wear those. They're quite valuable." Victoria waved a dismissive hand. "Don't be silly, Mom. It's a special occasion. You deserve to sparkle." Something about her eagerness made me uneasy. I agreed, reluctantly, and went to retrieve the jewelry. The wedding was a few months away, but the incident with the blue dress stuck with me. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it had planted a seed of unease. I found myself increasingly aware of Victoria's comments about my clothes, her subtle suggestions about what I should and shouldn't wear. Over the next few weeks, I noticed some of my favorite pieces missing from my closet. A silk scarf here, a cashmere cardigan there. I initially dismissed it as absent-mindedness on my part. I'd always been prone to misplacing things. One day, while scrolling through Instagram, I froze. There, in a photo of Victoria and Julian at a friend's birthday party, was my missing emerald necklace, gleaming against her throat. My blood ran cold. I scrolled further. There, in another photo, was my cashmere cardigan, draped casually over her shoulders. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Victoria hadn't simply been offering fashion advice. She'd been systematically taking my clothes, the pieces she deemed worthy of her own wardrobe, and she'd been using the wedding as an excuse to acquire more. A wave of anger washed over me, hot and sharp. It wasn't just about the clothes. It was about the betrayal, the calculated manipulation, the audacity of it all. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. A plan began to form in my mind, a slow, simmering ember of revenge. I wouldn't confront her yet. Not yet. I had to play the long game. The soft click of the closet door closing behind me felt strangely final. "Your taste is just so dated, Mom," Victoria had said, not even a week ago, wrinkling her nose at my perfectly good cashmere sweater. I ran my hand along the smooth, cool fabric of the dresses hanging in my walk-in closet, each one a memory, a moment. This silk gown, the one I wore to the opera with my late husband, Richard. He'd whispered, "You look breathtaking, Mona," as he helped me with my wrap. Victoria had scoffed at it just last month. "Seriously, Mom, that's giving grandmother vibes." She'd actually shuddered. I'd offered it to her then, a little hurt, a little hopeful she'd appreciate the vintage Valentino. "Oh, I couldn't possibly," she demurred. A flicker of something, was it disdain, in her eyes. "But maybe I could borrow it sometime, for a theme party or something." I hadn't seen it since. I traced the delicate beading on a cocktail dress I'd bought for a charity gala last year. "Too much bling," Victoria had declared. Funny, because I distinctly remember her wearing it to Julian's office holiday party. The photo splashed across her Instagram feed, tagged with vintage Finlockheim. My eyes scanned the rows of shoes, handbags, jewelry, each piece carefully chosen, lovingly cared for. A wave of nausea washed over me. The Chanel jacket, the Prada handbag, the diamond earrings Richard had given me for our anniversary, all gone, or rather, not gone, simply relocated to Victoria's closet, no doubt, masquerading as her own stylish acquisitions. "I don't understand how you can afford all these designer things, Victoria," I'd said casually a few weeks ago, gesturing towards her overflowing closet. "Oh, you know," she'd replied with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Deals, sample sales, a little bit of vintage magic." Vintage magic. Indeed. A strange calm settled over me. It wasn't sadness. Not exactly. It was more a cold, hard clarity. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every dress, every shoe, every handbag, every piece of jewelry that was missing. Meticulously, I documented each item, remembering the date I bought it, the occasion I wore it, the price I paid. I even pulled up old photos of myself wearing the items, solid proof of ownership. This wasn't about the clothes. Not really. It was about the blatant disrespect, the casual disregard for my feelings, the insidious way Victoria had chipped away at my confidence, making me feel frumpy and outdated, making me feel invisible. I'd always indulged Victoria, wanting her to have the best, wanting her to feel loved and cherished. I'd funded her lavish lifestyle, her designer wardrobe, her extravagant vacations. "You're so lucky, Mom," she'd often say. "You have such great taste." A compliment on the surface, but underneath, a subtle manipulation, a way to pave the path for the inevitable borrowing that always turned into permanent acquisition. This wasn't just about a few missing dresses anymore. This was about taking back control, reclaiming what was mine, not just the material possessions, but something far more precious, my self-worth. I closed my phone, a small, tight smile playing on my lips. The Thanksgiving family dinner was just a few weeks away. Julian's parents would be there, along with all my siblings and their families. The perfect audience. A flicker of an idea, a seed of a plan, began to take root. Victoria wanted a show. I would give her a show she'd never forget. I wouldn't say a word to her before then. Let her flaunt her vintage finds. Let her bask in the compliments. The anticipation, the delicious irony of it all, filled me with a quiet sense of power. I had a feeling this Thanksgiving was going to be memorable. The game, my dear Victoria, has just begun. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. "That dress makes you look like a deflated balloon, Mom," Victoria declared, her voice dripping with disdain. "You can't possibly wear that to Uncle Robert's wedding." This wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. I smoothed down the silk of the sapphire blue dress, the one I'd bought specifically for the occasion. "It's perfectly appropriate, Victoria," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It's elegant, and the color suits me." Victoria scoffed. "Elegant? It's frumpy. You'll embarrass me." And Julian, her ever-so-perfect fiancé, nodded in agreement from the doorway. "Perhaps something a little less matronly, Mona," he offered, his smile strained. I felt my cheeks flush with shame. "I have other options," I mumbled, already retreating. Victoria followed me into my bedroom, her eyes scanning my closet like a hawk. "There's that beige one," she said, pointing to a shapeless shift dress I'd bought on clearance years ago and rarely worn. "It's simple. It won't clash with anyone." Simple, yes. It also made me look like a walking potato sack. But arguing with Victoria was like trying to reason with a hurricane. So I swallowed my pride and changed. The beige dress hung loosely on my frame, hiding any hint of my figure. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. A frumpy, invisible woman stared back at me. Where was the vibrant, stylish woman I used to be? Victoria, however, seemed pleased. "Seen much better," she chirped, smoothing down non-existent wrinkles. "You'll blend right in." Blend in. That's exactly what I'd become. Background noise in my own life. Later that day, at the wedding, I felt like a ghost. People barely glanced my way, their attention drawn to Victoria, radiant in a vibrant red gown, and Julian, his arm possessively round her waist. I sat at a table in the corner, nursing a glass of wine, watching them mingle. They were the stars of the show, while I was a mere extra. The evening wore on, a blur of forced smiles and polite conversation. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to see my sister, Eleanor. "Mona, are you all right?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "You seem withdrawn." I forced a smile. "Just a bit tired," I lied. "All the wedding excitement. You know?" Eleanor didn't look convinced. "You barely touched your food," she pointed out. "And that dress, it's not really you," I sighed. There was no point in pretending with Eleanor. Victoria made me change, I confessed, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "She made you," she repeated, her voice rising. "What happened to that beautiful blue dress you were wearing earlier?" I explained the scene at my house, the humiliation of being dismissed and judged by my own daughter. Eleanor listened intently, her expression hardening with each word. "That's outrageous, Mona," she said, her voice low. "Victoria's behavior is completely unacceptable." I shrugged, trying to downplay it. "It's just a dress," I murmured. "It doesn't matter." But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't true. It wasn't just the dress. It was the constant criticism, the subtle digs, the feeling that my own daughter was trying to erase me. It was the growing realization that Victoria wasn't concerned about my fashion choices. She was concerned about control. She wanted to mold me into someone she wasn't embarrassed by, someone who wouldn't overshadow her, someone invisible. Later that evening, as I drove home from the wedding, a strange calmness settled over me. The hurt and humiliation remained, but something else had begun to take root. A quiet resolve. I wouldn't be erased. I wouldn't be controlled. I would reclaim myself, and as I pulled into my driveway, the rain finally stopped, and a sliver of moon peeked through the clouds, casting a pale glow on the house. It felt like a sign, a promise of things to come. Something was shifting, changing. The game was on. I knew with a certainty that surprised even myself that Victoria's reign of fashion tyranny was coming to an end. The first step, I decided, was to take inventory. I needed to know exactly what Victoria had taken, what pieces of myself she had quietly appropriated over the years. I spent the next few days going through my closet, my jewelry box, my drawers, and what I discovered was more shocking than I could have imagined. The ballroom shimmered, a kaleidoscope of silk and flashing lights, but I felt shrouded in a dull, gray fog. Victoria, radiant in my emerald green silk dress, held court near the dance floor. "Isn't it amazing how Julian just gets my style?" she gushed to a group of admiring guests. He smiled, oblivious, adjusting my cufflinks that gleamed against his crisp white shirt. My stomach churned. This wasn't just about a dress or a pair of cufflinks. This was about erasure. I was a ghost in my own life, fading into the background while Victoria paraded in my stolen finery, claiming it, and me as her own. I drifted to the edge of the room, seeking refuge near the dessert table. A waiter offered me a champagne flute. "Congratulations to your family," he said with a polite smile. I managed a weak smile back. "Thank you," I murmured, taking a sip. The bubbles tickled my throat, but the lump in my chest remained. Across the room, Victoria laughed, tossing her head back, the emerald silk shimmering under the lights. It was the dress I'd bought for my anniversary last year, the one I'd saved for a truly special occasion. "Mom, you never wear this kind of thing anymore," Victoria had said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, when she'd borrowed it a few weeks ago. "It would be such a shame for it to just hang in your closet." Now, she was the center of attention, basking in compliments meant for me, for my taste, for the memories woven into the fabric of that dress. I watched her, the anger simmering beneath my forced composure. This wasn't the first time. The cashmere scarf I'd received for my birthday, the vintage pearl earrings I'd cherished since my mother gave them to me, they'd all found their way into Victoria's possession. Each missing item was a small, sharp jab, a constant reminder of my diminishing presence in my own daughter's life. I felt a hand on my arm. "Mona, you all right? You seem a bit withdrawn." It was my Uncle Robert, the groom, his face creased with concern. "Just a bit tired," I lied, forcing a brighter smile. "All the excitement." He patted my hand. "Well, don't overdo it. It's your niece's special day, but we want you to enjoy it too." His words, though meant to be kind, twisted the knife further. Victoria's special day. It felt like every day was Victoria's special day. My needs, my feelings, seemed to evaporate in the face of her relentless self-promotion. I excused myself and slipped away to the quiet solitude of the ladies' room. Splashing cold water on my face, I stared at my reflection, a middle-aged woman, dressed in a plain, ill-fitting dress, the one Victoria had deemed suitable for me after dismissing my original choice, stared back. Who was this woman? Where had the vibrant, confident woman I once was gone? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. The anger was morphing into something else, a cold, hard resolve. I wouldn't let Victoria erase me. I wouldn't let her steal my joy, my memories, my sense of self. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Returning to the reception, I moved through the crowd like a phantom, observing, calculating. I saw Julian whispering something to Victoria, his hand resting possessively on the emerald silk of my dress. She giggled, leaning into him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart skipped a beat. Was he proposing, using my dress as a backdrop for his grand gesture? The audacity was breathtaking. I watched as Julian opened the box, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. The light caught the stone, sending a dazzling ray across the room. Victoria gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. The crowd around them erupted in cheers and applause. She said yes. Someone shouted. Julian beamed, slipping the ring onto Victoria's finger. It was a beautiful ring, a classic design, elegant and understated. It looked strangely familiar. I squinted, trying to get a closer look. Then it hit me. It was my grandmother's ring, the one I had given to Victoria for safekeeping, the one she'd promised to never wear. "It's too old-fashioned for me, Mom," she'd said, "but I'll keep it safe for you, safe. Right?" The anger that had been simmering now roared to life, a fiery inferno consuming the last vestiges of my passive acceptance. This wasn't just about clothes anymore. This was about legacy, about respect, about the fundamental bond between mother and daughter. Victoria had crossed a line, and now it was my turn. A slow smile spread across my face. The wedding was far from over. The night was still young, and I had a plan. The harsh bathroom lighting glared down, reflecting in the cheap plastic of the hotel vanity. I stared at myself in the mirror, still wearing that ridiculous floral monstrosity Victoria had forced on me. "It's much more appropriate, Mom," she'd said, her voice dripping with a false sweetness that grated on my nerves. Appropriate? For what? A garden party in 1985? My reflection stared back, a stranger in this frumpy, ill-fitting dress. My own beautiful silk gown, the one I'd carefully chosen, hung forgotten back in my hotel room. Victoria had declared it to show off for her fiance's cousin's wedding. "Julian's family is very understated," she'd explained, a subtle smirk playing on her lips. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the humiliation. The wedding had been a blur of forced smiles and whispered apologies for my unfortunate attire. Even my own sister, bless her heart, had given me a pitying look. "Are you all right, Mona?" she'd murmured, squeezing my hand. "I'm fine," I'd lied, pasting on a brave face. But inside, I was crumbling. This wasn't just about a dress. It was about control. Victoria had been chipping away at my confidence, my sense of self, for months now. It started subtly, with little comments about my dated style. Then she'd started borrowing things, a scarf here, a necklace there, pieces I cherished, things that held memories and meaning. They'd always reappear eventually, tucked away in my closet as if nothing had happened. "Just trying it on, Mom," she'd say with a shrug. "Don't worry, I put it back." But they weren't always quite the same. A delicate silk blouse might have a faint stain, a vintage brooch missing a stone. And now this blatant humiliation, disguised as concern for my appearance. She'd maneuvered me into wearing this awful dress, making me feel like a frumpy, out-of-touch embarrassment, while she, of course, looked stunning in a sleek, designer gown, one that looked suspiciously familiar. The cut, the fabric, it reminded me of the emerald green dress I'd bought for myself last spring. The one I hadn't worn yet. The one that had mysteriously vanished from my closet. I gripped the edge of the sink, my knuckles turning white. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't about the clothes. It was about power. Victoria was trying to erase me, to replace me with her own carefully curated image. She wanted to control everything, even how I presented myself to the world. She wanted to be the stylish one, the admired one. And she was using my own wardrobe, my own identity, to achieve it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I remembered other incidents, other borrowed items that had never been returned. My favorite cashmere cardigan, a pair of diamond earrings my mother had given me, a vintage Chanel handbag I'd splurged on for my 50th birthday, gone, all gone. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Enough. This charade had gone on long enough. I wouldn't be silenced, wouldn't be erased. I wouldn't let her steal my joy, my memories, my sense of self any longer. A new resolve hardened within me. I wouldn't confront her directly, not yet. This needed to be handled delicately, strategically. I would play her game, but on my terms. I opened my eyes. The reflection staring back no longer looked defeated. It was a look of quiet determination, a look that promised retribution. I would get my things back, and more, much more. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed down the hideous floral dress, and walked out of the bathroom. I had a plan forming, a plan that involved a little detective work, a lot of patience, and a healthy dose of sweet, sweet revenge. The wedding reception was still in full swing. I saw Victoria twirling on the dance floor with Julian, her emerald green dress shimmering under the lights. She caught my eye and flashed a bright, triumphant smile. I smiled back. Let her enjoy her victory while it lasts. Because the game, my dear Victoria, has just begun, and I intend to win. I walked over to the bar and ordered a glass of champagne. Celebrating something? The bartender asked. Yes, I replied, taking a sip of the bubbly liquid. I most certainly am. The taste was surprisingly sweet. Thanksgiving dinner at my sister's felt strained. I wore a simple, elegant cashmere sweater, a gift from my late mother, and Victoria, as usual, made a snide comment. Mom, really, that sweater again? It's so vintage. Julian chuckled. Bless his heart. Oblivious to the barb, I just smiled thinly and replied, It's a classic. Dear, not vintage. I served myself a generous helping of mashed potatoes, ignoring the look Victoria shot me. I knew that look. It was the same look she gave me at her cousin's graduation last spring, when I'd worn a perfectly respectable linen suit. Mom, you look like you're headed to a garden club meeting, not a graduation. Victoria had stage whispered then, loud enough for several family members to overhear. Julian had just patted her hand and said something about her always having such a great sense of style. He didn't understand. This wasn't about style. It was about control. Christmas Eve was even worse. I'd found a beautiful burgundy velvet dress at a consignment store, a real steal. It fit perfectly and made me feel elegant. Oh, Mom, Victoria had said, her voice dripping with fox concern. Are you sure that color doesn't wash you out? It seems a little mature. Julian, ever the peacemaker, had chimed in. I think it's a lovely color, Victoria. Don't you think so, Mrs. Douglas? I simply said, Thank you, Julian, and turned my attention to the Christmas tree, my heart heavy. Underneath the brightly wrapped gifts, a chill settled deep within me. After each family event, each thinly veiled insult, I would retreat to the quiet solitude of my bedroom and pull out the large, leather-bound journal I'd started keeping. It wasn't a diary of emotions, but a meticulous catalog. I started small, documenting the disappearance of a silk scarf here, a pair of pearl earrings there. It became a ritual, a silent act of defiance against Victoria's subtle plunder. Each missing item, carefully described and dated, became another entry in my growing ledger. I even included photos, taken surreptitiously of Victoria wearing my things, often paired with items I knew Julian had gifted her. The emerald earrings he'd given her for her birthday, perfectly complementing my emerald green cashmere cardigan, which had mysteriously vanished from my closet a week later. The diamond pendant necklace, a graduation gift from Julian, worn with a silk blouse I hadn't seen in months. My entries extended beyond clothing. A small antique silver compact, given to me by my grandmother, disappeared shortly after Victoria admired it. A vintage beaded handbag, a treasure from a Persian flea market, was suddenly found in Victoria's closet, nestled amongst her own designer bags. She claimed she'd borrowed it and simply forgotten to return it. Forgotten? How could she forget something so unique, so obviously not her own? The more I documented, the clearer the pattern became. It wasn't occasional borrowing, it was systematic acquisition. Victoria was curating her wardrobe with my belongings, pieces of my life, my memories. The anger simmering beneath the surface began to harden into something colder, sharper. It was no longer just about the material possessions. It was about the disrespect, the entitlement, the casual disregard for my feelings. I had spent years nurturing Victoria, providing for her, only to be treated as an invisible, frumpy afterthought, as if my taste, my memories, my very presence were something to be discarded, replaced with whatever shiny new thing Victoria deemed worthy. One afternoon, while Victoria was at work and Julian was out of town on business, I decided to take a closer look at her closet. I knew I was crossing a line, but the need to confirm my suspicions was overwhelming. I carefully opened the door, half expecting to be met with the familiar jumble of designer labels and trendy pieces. What I found, however, was even more shocking than I could have imagined. It was a veritable museum of my missing items. My grandmother's silver compact sat on her vanity table, next to a perfume bottle I hadn't seen in years. My missing cashmere cardigan was draped over a chair, next to a stack of silk scarves, all mine. There, hanging on the back of the door, was my burgundy velvet dress, the one Victoria had deemed too mature for me. I reached out and touched the soft fabric, a wave of cold fury washing over me. I spent the next few hours carefully photographing everything, adding the new evidence to my growing collection in the leather-bound journal. As I worked, a plan began to form in my mind, a plan so audacious, so perfectly tailored to Victoria's sensibilities, that it almost made me smile. It involved a particular holiday, a large gathering of family and friends, and a very public unveiling. It would be a Christmas none of us would ever forget. I closed my journal, a sense of quiet resolve settling over me. The game, my dear Victoria, is about to change. The rich aroma of Italian leather filled my boutique, a scent I usually found comforting. But today, it did little to soothe the simmering anger within me. I was straightening a display of silk scarves, pretending to be engrossed in the task, when I overheard two of my sales associates, Chloe and Brittany, gossiping near the cash register. "Did you see Victoria's latest Instagram post?" Chloe asked, her voice hushed but excited. Brittany giggled. "With that Chanel jacket. Killed it, I swear. That girl could wear a potato sack and make it look designer." My hand froze on a vibrant emerald green scarf. "Chanel jacket?" I asked casually, trying to sound disinterested, though my heart pounded in my chest. Chloe turned to me, oblivious to the turmoil brewing beneath my calm facade. "Yeah, Mona, a gorgeous tweed one, vintage-looking but super chic. You know, the kind you'd find in your private collection upstairs." Brittany chimed in. "Totally your style, Mona." Actually, I thought it looked familiar. My smile was tight. "Oh, really? I suppose it's possible. I have so many pieces. It's hard to keep track." I moved away, pretending to check on a customer, but my mind raced. It was mine. The limited edition Chanel jacket I'd purchased in Paris last spring. The one I'd worn only once, to a charity gala, before carefully storing it away. I hadn't even had a chance to wear it again, and now, there it was, plastered all over Victoria's Instagram feed, captioned with some vapid comment about timeless style. The audacity, after the wedding debacle, after the constant subtle digs about my dated wardrobe, the stolen Hermes scarf, the missing Louboutin pumps, this was the final straw. It wasn't just about the jacket itself. It was about the blatant disrespect, the sense of entitlement, the utter disregard for my feelings. I excused myself and headed to the back office, my phone already in my hand. I needed to see this for myself. Sure enough, there it was, my jacket, draped casually over Victoria's shoulders, as if she owned it. She was posing with Julian, both of them beaming, looking utterly carefree. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a case of borrowing anymore. This was a calculated act of defiance. I scrolled through the comments, a wave of nausea washing over me as I read the praises of Victoria's impeccable style. Fashion icon. One comment gushed. "Where can I get that jacket?" Another asked. My fingers tightened around my phone. It was time to end this. The simmering anger transformed into a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't just about reclaiming my jacket. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth. I needed to teach Victoria a lesson she wouldn't soon forget. I opened my laptop and started a new spreadsheet. Meticulously, I began to document every item of clothing, every accessory, every piece of jewelry that I suspected Victoria had taken over the years. The emerald green Gucci dress I wore to Julian's birthday party, now mysteriously missing. The vintage Dior handbag I'd inherited from my grandmother, last seen slung over Victoria's shoulder in a photo with her friends. The diamond earrings I'd received for my 25th wedding anniversary, now dangling from Victoria's ears in a selfie. The list grew longer and longer, a testament to Victoria's systematic pilfering of my wardrobe. As I worked, a plan began to form in my mind, a plan so intricate, so perfectly tailored to Victoria's vanity, that it would leave her utterly exposed. This wasn't just about getting my things back. This was about exposing her hypocrisy, her entitlement, and the true cost of her obsession with appearances. I closed my laptop, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. Thanksgiving was just around the corner, a holiday traditionally spent with family, filled with warmth, gratitude, and togetherness. This year, however, it was going to be different. This year, Thanksgiving would be a reckoning. I walked back out onto the shop floor, my demeanor calm and collected, my eyes gleaming with a newfound sense of purpose. "Chloe, Brittany," I said, my voice even and steady, "I need your help with something." The house was quiet, finally, after the wedding fiasco. The endless stream of apologies from my sister Carol, the hushed phone calls with my mother, the sting of Victoria's dismissive "you'll be fine, Mom," still echoing in my ears. The silence was a balm. I poured myself a glass of wine, the cool liquid a welcome contrast to the simmering anger I still felt. "I'll be fine," I muttered to myself, the taste of the wine suddenly bitter. Victoria thought she could just waltz in, dictate what I wore. humiliate me in front of our entire family, and then dismiss me with a pat on the head. I picked up my phone, opening Victoria's Instagram. "Let's see how fine you think I am after this, darling daughter," I whispered, a flicker of resolve igniting within me. Her feed was a carefully curated parade of aspirational images. Brunch at trendy cafes, weekend getaways, designer outfits artfully ranged. And there it was, brazenly displayed in a photo from her girl's weekend last month. My emerald green silk scarf, the one I'd bought in Florence, a memento from a trip I'd taken long before Victoria was even born. "You wouldn't understand," she'd sniffed when I'd tried to explain its sentimental value. "It's vintage. It's cool. Cool enough to steal, apparently." I took a screenshot, my fingers trembling slightly. This wasn't just about the scarf. It was about the pattern, the years of subtle appropriation, the casual disregard for my feelings. I scrolled further, a cold dread settling in my stomach. There, in a picture from Julian's birthday dinner, was my pearl necklace, the one my own mother had given me for my graduation. "It's a classic, Mom," Victoria had said, her eyes gleaming with acquisitive desire. "You never wear it anymore." Now it graced her slender neck, nestled against the designer dress she'd claimed was on sale. I felt a wave of nausea, the wine turning sour in my mouth. I scrolled back further, almost afraid of what I'd find next, and there it was, almost hidden in a group photo from a holiday party. The diamond earrings my husband had given me for our anniversary. "They'd look so much better on you," Victoria had purred, holding them up to her ears. "You'd never even notice they were gone." My breath hitched. She hadn't just taken a few things. She'd systematically plundered my wardrobe, my jewelry box, my memories. I opened a new note on my phone and started typing, meticulously cataloging each stolen item. The green silk scarf, the pearl necklace, the diamond earrings, my cream cashmere cardigan, my vintage Chanel handbag. The list grew longer and longer, a testament to Victoria's audacity. I moved to my closet, pulling out old photos, comparing them to Victoria's Instagram posts. The evidence was irrefutable. There was my red leather belt in a selfie with Julian, my turquoise bracelet peeking out from under her sleeve in a picture from a concert, my favorite black dress, the one I'd worn to my sister's wedding, now featured in a shot of Victoria and Julian at a gala. "He loves it on you," Victoria had chirped when I'd expressed surprise at seeing her in it. "He said I look like a movie star." I felt a strange sense of detachment as I continued my inventory. This wasn't just about the material possessions. It was about the violation, the betrayal, the sheer audacity of it all. Victoria hadn't just taken my things. She'd taken pieces of my life, my history, my identity, and she'd done it with a smile, a casual comment, a dismissive wave of her hand. The anger that had been simmering within me now began to boil. This wasn't just carelessness. It was calculated. She knew what she was doing. She knew it would hurt me, and she didn't care. I poured myself another glass of wine, the liquid now a fiery balm to my wounded pride. I finished my list, scrolling through it with a grim satisfaction. The total value of the stolen items was staggering, enough to make even Julian's jaw drop. A plan began to form in my mind, hazy at first, then sharpening into focus. Thanksgiving was just a few weeks away. Julian's family would be there, all of them eager to impress. Victoria would be preening, showing off her finds, basking in their admiration. It was the perfect opportunity. "You want to play dress up, Victoria?" I murmured to myself, a cold smile playing on my lips. "Let's see how you like it when the game turns against you." I closed my laptop, a sense of anticipation replacing the anger. This Thanksgiving, things were going to be different. Very different. Victoria had no idea what was coming, and that, I realized, was the most satisfying part of all. I had a few calls to make. The crisp December air nipped at my face as I watched Victoria and Julian pull into my driveway. I smoothed down the front of my emerald green dress, the very one she'd sneered at just a few months ago at her cousin's wedding, saying, "Mother, you look like a Christmas tree trying to blend in with the landscaping." Today, however, it felt perfect. Today, everything felt right. I'd sent a group text earlier, inviting them over for an early Christmas Eve dinner. Just a small gathering, I'd typed, before the holiday rush truly begins. Victoria had responded with a flurry of kissy face emojis. Little did she know what kind of presents I had waiting for her. The door chime echoed through the house. I took a deep breath and opened it, plastering a warm smile on my face. "Darling, you're here. And Julian, so good to see you." Victoria kissed my cheek. "Mom, you look festive," she said, her eyes scanning my outfit with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. "Is that dress from the wedding?" Julian, bless his heart, remained oblivious. "Mrs. Douglas, it's lovely to see you. Happy holidays." He extended a bouquet of lilies, my favorite. "How thoughtful, Julian. Come in, come in. It's freezing out there." I led them into the living room where a roaring fire crackled in the fireplace, casting dancing shadows on the walls. On the coffee table sat a beautifully wrapped gift box, large and undeniably extravagant. Victoria's eyes immediately locked onto it. "Wow, Mom, who's that for?" she asked, her voice laced with a curious lilt. "Patience, darling," I said with a wink. "All will be revealed." I gestured for them to sit. "Can I get you both something to drink? Wine? Hot chocolate wine, please," Victoria said, already eyeing the gift box again. Julian opted for hot chocolate. As I poured their drinks in the kitchen, I could feel the anticipation radiating from the living room. This was it, the moment I'd been planning for months. I returned with their drinks and set them on coasters. "So," I began, my voice calm despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me, "before we have dinner, I have a little surprise for you both." Victoria practically vibrated with excitement. I reached for the large gift box and slowly began to untie the ribbon. "Mom, you're killing me," Victoria exclaimed, a playful whine in her voice. I lifted the lid to reveal not one, but several smaller, exquisitely wrapped boxes nestled inside. Victoria gasped. What is all this?" "Well, darling," I said, my voice softening, "over the past few months, I've been doing a little inventory, and I realized that several of my favorite pieces, some quite valuable, seemed to have gone missing." Victoria's face paled. Julian looked from her to me, clearly bewildered. I picked up one of the smaller boxes and handed it to Victoria. "This one's for you," I said gently. With trembling hands, Victoria unwrapped the box to reveal a familiar emerald green silk scarf. The very scarf I'd noticed missing from my closet months ago. The one I'd worn with a cream-colored suit to a charity luncheon. The same scarf I'd later seen draped casually around Victoria's neck in a photo on her Instagram. Captioned effortless chic. Victoria's eyes widened. "You can explain," she stammered. "Oh, I'm sure you can," I replied calmly. I picked up another box and handed it to her. This one contained a diamond tennis bracelet, a gift from my late mother. It too had vanished mysteriously, only to reappear on Victoria's wrist in a selfie with Julian. Victoria's eyes darted nervously to Julian, who was now watching the scene unfold with a growing sense of unease. I continued, handing her box after box. A cashmere cardigan, a pair of designer sunglasses, a vintage Chanel handbag, a pearl necklace, all items that had once belonged to me, all items that had mysteriously migrated to Victoria's possession. With each unwrapping, Victoria's face became a canvas of guilt and shame. Julian's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, and then to something resembling disappointment. "Victoria," I said, my voice now laced with a quiet strength I hadn't realized I possessed. "I understand the allure of beautiful things. I appreciate fine craftsmanship myself, but these are not yours to take." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "You may think you're clever, slipping these items into your own wardrobe, hoping I wouldn't notice. But I did notice. I've always noticed." Victoria's eyes welled with tears. "Mom, I am so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Didn't mean what?" "Victoria," I asked, my voice unwavering. "Didn't mean to disrespect me? Didn't mean to steal from me? Or did you just think I wouldn't notice? That I'm too old, too out of touch to understand the value of these things?" Julian cleared his throat. "Victoria," he said, his voice firm, "your mother deserves an explanation, a real one." He looked at me, his expression filled with a mixture of apology and something else, perhaps a newfound respect. Victoria finally looked me in the eye. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling, I was wrong. I'm so ashamed. I don't know what to say." I looked at the pile of returned items on the coffee table, the firelight glinting off the diamonds, the pearls, the gold. I looked at my daughter, her face streaked with tears, her carefully constructed facade of confidence crumbling before my eyes. And I looked at Julian, watching us both with a quiet intensity. This Christmas Eve was certainly shaping up to be memorable. I had one more surprise waiting, a surprise that involved a certain ski chalet in Aspen, booked in my name, and the realization that sometimes the best revenge is simply reclaiming what's rightfully yours and leaving those who wronged you to face the consequences of their actions. "Victoria," I said, a small smile playing on my lips, "we have a lot to discuss." The air crackled with unspoken words, the promise of more revelations to come. The air crackled with unspoken tension, thick and heavy like the humid air before a summer storm. "You know, Victoria," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands, "I always thought your sense of style was evolving, borrowing a scarf here, a necklace there. I suppose I attributed it to youthful exuberance." I paused, letting the words hang in the air between us. Julian shifted uncomfortably beside her, his eyes darting between Victoria and me. He seemed to sense the storm brewing. "Mom," Victoria started, her voice tight. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, just reminiscing, darling," I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. "Remember that Chanel jacket I bought in Paris, the one I wore only once, to your Aunt Clara's gallery opening?" Victoria's face paled slightly. I don't know what you mean." Her denial was weak, almost pathetic. "Really?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because I distinctly remember seeing a photo on your Instagram, a selfie taken in a dimly lit restaurant, you wearing that very jacket. The lighting was poor, but the distinctive quilting and pearl buttons were unmistakable." I reached into my bag, pulling out a neatly organized folder. "I have a rather comprehensive collection of such photos, Victoria," I said, placing the folder on the table between us. "Screenshots, you might say. A visual diary of your borrowing habits." Julian's eyes widened as he glanced at the open folder. The topmost photo showed Victoria beaming in my emerald green silk dress, the one I'd saved for special occasions. "Victoria," he murmured, his voice laced with disbelief. She shot him a venomous look before turning back to me. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "You're making a scene." "Am I asked, my voice calm. "Or am I simply reclaiming what is rightfully mine?" I opened the folder further, revealing page after page of documented evidence. My missing Hermes scarf, the vintage Gucci handbag I'd inherited from my grandmother, the diamond earrings my husband had given me for our anniversary, all worn by Victoria in various social media posts. "It's quite a collection, isn't it?" I observed dryly. "A testament to your resourcefulness." Victoria's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Julian, his face now a mask of disappointment, reached for the folder. He flipped through the pages, his gaze lingering on each photo. Finally, he closed the folder with a sigh. "Victoria," he said quietly, "your mother is right. This is wrong." "But Julian," Victoria pleaded, her voice cracking. "They were just sitting in her closet. She never wears them." He shook his head. "That doesn't give you the right to take them without asking," he said firmly. "Especially not items of such sentimental and monetary value." He looked at me, his expression contrite. "Mrs. Douglas," he said, "I apologize for Victoria's behavior. I had no idea. Please call me Mona," I replied. I turned my gaze back to Victoria, who sat slumped in her chair, defeated. "I believe I have a solution that will benefit all of us," I announced, my voice regaining its strength. "I'm selling the house." Victoria's head snapped up. "What?" she shrieked. "You can't do that, actually," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "I can, and I am. The closing is next week. I've already booked a one-way ticket to Bali. I plan to spend the next few months exploring Southeast Asia, perhaps even learn to scuba dive." I glanced at the folder on the table. "As for my belongings," I continued, "I expect them returned to me by tomorrow morning. Every single item." Victoria's face was a mixture of shock and fury. "But where will we live?" she sputtered. I shrugged. "That, my dear," I said, "is no longer my concern. You and Julian are resourceful. I'm sure you'll figure something out. I stood up, picked up my bag, and turned to leave. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I said, my voice dripping with a newfound sense of freedom. As I walked away, I could feel their eyes on my back. I didn't need to turn round to see the expressions on their faces. I knew they were a mixture of disbelief, anger, and perhaps, just perhaps, a touch of fear, because they had finally learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate a mother's love for her Chanel jacket or her ability to reclaim her life. The Balinese sunsets were calling, and I had no intention of looking back.